Hi everyone, this is the run through for the B3C3P3 Foundation Past Paper 1. Don't forget that you have this, the equations list at the front. Don't forget to use that in your physics section in particular. This first question says, look at the picture of bull sperm cells. Bull sperm cells contain a number of different chromosomes to the number in body cells. Bull skin cells contain 60 chromosomes. Work out how many chromosomes are in a bull sperm cell. Use this to explain why skin cells have 60 chromosomes. So, the first thing is the bull sperm cell has 30 chromosomes, and then it says it uses to explain why skin cells have 60 chromosomes. And it's because the sperm cell and the egg cell contain half the chromosome number of a normal cell. So, sperm cells and egg cells, they contain half the number of a normal cell, and fertilization produces 60 chromosomes. So the first point, this is your first mark here, and then the second mark is just saying that sperm cells contain half the number of chromosomes. And then the reason why the skin cells have 60 chromosomes is that fertilization means that the egg cells and the sperm cells merge together and produce the 60 chromosomes. So fertilization produces 60 chromosomes. So next question, look at the image of human cheek cells. DNA codes the code for the production of a substance needed for growth. What's the substance needed for growth? Well, that is protein for 1 mark. And then cell division occurs during growth. Write down the name of the type of cell division used for growth. And you've got choice between mitosis and meiosis. And the name of the type of cell division used for growth is mitosis. And explain why DNA replicates before cells divide. And the reason why the DNA replicates before cells divide is so that each cell after it has the same amount of DNA after the division. So it's so that each cell contains the same amount of DNA for 1 mark, or something to that end. This next bit relates to the 6-mark question, and I'm going to ask that you mark that yourself using the mark scheme you can find online on the Google site. So here's a 6-mark question, just mark that yourself. If you need some help with that, then see your teacher in lesson. Next question, bacteria which live in hot water springs also produce amylase enzymes. Genetic engineering can be used to produce this amylase in large amounts. What is meant by genetic engineering? So there's 2 marks here. First mark is for saying that it's the transfer of genes. And the second mark is for saying where those genes come from and go to. So it's from one living organism to another. So from one organism to another. 1 mark for each of those. Next question. So, Carl is an athlete who competes in a 200-metre sprint. Sprinting needs energy. Respiration is a process that releases energy. Describe this process and suggest how it helps movement during the sprint. So, describing something just means to say what happens. So, respiration is where basically glucose reacts with oxygen. So, your first mark is for saying glucose reacts with oxygen, and glucose is a key word there, you need to make sure you get that in. And then the reason why that helps with movement is because the energy is needed to make the muscles contract. So energy needed to make muscles contract. You could also say that so the muscles can contract. Next, during the sprint, Carl's breathing rate and pulse rate increased. Write down 2 reasons why. So one thing is just to get more oxygen to the muscles. So to get more oxygen to the muscles. If in that bit you put more energy or more glucose to the muscles, that would also get you the mark. And the other reason why the heart rate increases is to get rid of the carbon dioxide that's made. So to remove carbon dioxide from muscles, or you could say excess heat from the muscles. So it's to get something to the muscle, glucose, energy, or oxygen, and to get stuff out of the muscle which is being made during respiration, and that's the carbon dioxide or heat. Next question, look at the table of data. It shows the maximum oxygen consumption for males of different fitness levels. The males are aged between 13 and 29 years old. So there's the data. It says Carl is 25 years old. He has a maximum oxygen consumption of 44 centimetres cubed per kilogram per minute. Carl wants to improve his fitness level to excellent, which is here. Look at the table, calculate Carl's maximum oxygen consumption as a percentage of his lowest excellent value. So Carl's maximum oxygen consumption is 44. So you're going to use that number on the top of your fraction. It says calculate Carl's maximum oxygen consumption as a percentage of his lowest excellent value. So Carl is 25. So his age is in this bracket here. And then you move across, and the lowest number it needs to be for excellent is 47. So it's going to be 44 divided by 47, and then to turn into percentage times 100. Oh, not 1,000, sorry, times 100. And that equals 93.6%. So that is your answer. But equally, if you put 94 or 93.62 or 93.617, all those would be fine as well if you round that up to the nearest percentage. Then Carl was tested to obtain his maximum oxygen consumption after further training. He trained for 1 week during gentle jogging. His maximum oxygen consumption at the end of the week was 45 centimetres cubed per kilogram per minute. The second week he trained by sprinting and jogging. His maximum oxygen consumption at the end of this week was 48 centimetres cubed per kilogram per minute. Make a conclusion about Carl's fitness level and the training he used. So the first thing to recognise is that in the first week it's only gone up from 44 to 45. And then in the second week, it goes up from 45 to 48. So it's gone up 1 in the first week and then 3 in the second week. So the second week training was more successful than the first week's training. So that's what your first mark is for. So second week was more successful than first week. And then you've got to look at the table, and the second week has actually pushed him into the excellent bracket. So the second mark was saying that the second week his fitness has improved to excellent. So in second week, fitness improved to excellent. You could equally say for the first mark that gentle jogging is not as good as sprinting and jogging, or the other way around. And you could also say that sprinting and jogging move into the excellent fitness level for the second mark. Rather than referring to the weeks, you could refer to what he's doing in those weeks. Next question says, blood is important for transport in the body. Blood contains different parts. Draw straight lines to connect each part of the blood to the job it does. They don't need to be straight, they just need to connect the right boxes to the correct ones on the sides. So, first thing, the red blood cell, that transports oxygen, see there to there. Platelet helps with blood clotting, and the white blood cell defends against disease. Now, if you got all of them right, that's 2 marks, and if you got 1 or 2 of them right, then you just get 1 mark. And then next question, leukemia is a disease of the blood. Research scientists do experiments using blood from people with leukemia. This allows a more detailed understanding of leukemia. Other scientists repeat these experiments, explain the benefits of repeating the research scientists' experiments. So there's 2 points here. First, that scientists need to gather more evidence to support the work of the scientists. So if you said something about other scientists getting more evidence to verify the results or check the results are right, that'll be your first mark. And the second mark is to make sure that the results are reproducible, so the idea that the results are reliable. You could also put something to do with improving the technique, because if you said that they're trying to improve the technique by doing it again, that would be another mark you could get. Onto the chemistry section. So medicinal drugs are specialty chemicals. They are often made in a batch process rather than a continuous process. What is the difference between those two types of process? So a batch process is when products are made when required, and continuous is when they're made all the time. So batch products are made when required, and continuous made all the time. Next question. Medical drugs often cost a lot of money to make and develop. One factor that affects the cost is the research, and testing has to be done. Write down other factors that affect the cost of making and developing a medicinal drug. So there are lots of different things you could put here, so I'm just going to reel them off, but you need 3 of them. So you could say about the cost of workers, or you could say labour, salaries or wages for those. You could talk about, so that's for 1 mark. For another mark, you could say that the energy or electricity or gas or power costs money. You could say that raw materials or starting materials cost money. You could say that marketing or advertising costs money. You could say that time taken to complete the process, so time equals money. You could say that rent, health and safety or pollution controls and equipment costs. So any 3 of those 8 things can get you those 3 marks. Next question. Medicinal drugs are tested to make sure they are safe to use. The research and testing of medical drugs, may include animal testing or testing on human volunteers. Scientists have different views about the use of animals or humans for drug testing, and Sarah's a scientist. Sarah says, I think scientists should use animal testing. Medical drugs may be poisonous to humans. So it says, suggest 2 other views that scientists may have about testing on animals or humans. Again, there are a number of different points you could have here, so I'm just going to reel them off. So you could say that tests on animals may give different results than with humans because they have different types of skin or different bodies. You could say that tests on humans risk harming humans. You could say that tests on humans have more benefits than risks. You could say that there are alternative testing than to use animals. You could say that not testing animals avoids protest from the public. You could say the rights of humans are more important than the rights of animals. So remember, these are things that other people might say, not necessarily the things that you might think yourself. You could say that people volunteer but animals do not, and you could also get a mark for talking about the cruelty or unnecessary suffering to animals. So any of 2 of those things I've said will get you 2 marks there. Next question. Petrol is a mixture of hydrocarbons. David investigates the energy released when 4 of these hydrocarbons are burnt. Look at the apparatus he uses. So hopefully you've done this in class, this experiment. So copper can, heating it with spirit burners. It says each time he burns 0.5 grams of hydrocarbon and heats 100 grams of water. David measures the temperature of the water before heating, and he measures the temperature again when the hydrocarbon has finished burning. These are his results. Here they are. Okay. And it says, which hydrocarbon releases the most energy, and explain your answer. So looking at the results, nonane releases the most energy, so that's first mark. And the reason is because it's got the largest temperature change, or the biggest temperature change. So you only get that second mark if you got nonane right. And then how many atoms are in 1 molecule of nonane? Now, atoms refer to the number of the letters. So the number of elements in this compound is 2. Okay, you've got 2 different symbols, but there are 9 carbons, 9 C's, and 20 H's in this molecule, and that's how many atoms there are. So there are 19 atoms in this molecule of nonane. Next question. Hydrogen peroxide is the molecular formula H2O2. Hydrogen peroxide can be manufactured by reacting barium peroxide with sulfuric acid. There's the reaction. Barium sulfate is a waste product, and they've given you the relative formula masses of all of them but sulfuric acid, and it wants you first to calculate the relative formula mass for sulfuric acid. So to calculate relative formula mass, you just add up the relative masses, which they've given you here, but they're already also in your periodic table. Add up the relative formula masses for all the atoms in sulfuric acid. So there are 2 H's, there is 1 S, and there are 4 oxygens, 4 O's. The way I know that is because these little numbers just refer to the number of the letter before it. So that equals 2 times 1, because that's what the relative mass of hydrogen is. You've got 1 times 32, which is the relative mass of sulfur, and you got 4 times 16, which is your relative mass of oxygen. So that equals 2 plus 32 plus 64. So add all those together and you get 98. So that is your relative formula mass of sulfuric acid. And then it says show the atom economy for the reaction is 12.7. Now atom economy equals the relative mass of the desired product. So here it tells you that barium sulfate is a waste product. So the one that we want is hydrogen peroxide. So it's the relative mass of that divided by the relative mass of all the products added together. So that's those two added together. So it says to show it's 12.7, so you've got 34, which is the relative mass of the desired product, which is the one that we want, which is hydrogen peroxide, divided by 233 plus 34. And then remember, an atom economy is a percentage, so you times that by 100, and that will give you 12.7. The fact it says show it's 12.7 means that you can do that calculation. If it's not 12.7, then you know you've gone wrong. The manufacture of hydrogen peroxide has an atom economy of 12.7. The process is not very green. Explain why. So if the atom economy is very low, that means it's not a very green process. So that's your first point. The atom economy is low. And that means that there's lots of waste made. So lots of atoms are wasted. If you just put lots of waste, that's fine. Next question. Graphite is a form of carbon. Look at the diagram and hit that's graphite. It says look at the statements about graphite. Put ticks in the boxes next to 2 correct statements. So firstly, graphite doesn't have a low melting point. It's a high melting point, so it's not that one. Graphite conducts electricity when solid. Well, graphite does conduct electricity, so you tick that one. Graphite is colourless. Well, graphite is the stuff in pencils, so it's black, so it's not colourless. Graphite is insoluble in water, and graphite is extremely hard. We know it's not extremely hard. That's diamond that it's extremely hard. Graphite's quite soft, actually. That's why it comes off onto your paper when you use a pencil, and it's not soluble in water. So there's your 2 ticks you should have ticked. If you got one of those and only ticked one other, then you get 1 mark. So you're giving you a picture of another form of carbon. What is that one? Well, that one is diamond. So you just need to know what these different forms of carbon look like. Next question. Magnesium reacts to dilute hydrochloric acid. Magnesium chloride and hydrogen are made. Write down the word equation of the reaction. Now you should always be getting these questions right because they give you everything you need in the question. So first thing to do is just to draw an arrow. Then on this side of the arrow, write down the 2 things that have been added together, and on this side of the arrow, write down the 2 things, or more, that have been made. The 2 things that are being added together, it tells you magnesium reacts with hydrochloric acid, so you put magnesium plus hydrochloric acid. On that side, and it tells you that magnesium chloride and hydrogen are made. So you're going to put that on the other side and put a plus between the different substances. Try and put it all on one line if you can. I've obviously just run out of space there. Next question says Peter and Rachel investigate the reaction to magnesium and hydrochloric acid. Look at the apparatus they use. There it is. So they time how long it takes for all the magnesium to react, and that's the reaction time. Look at their results. Peter and Rachel conclude that the reaction time gets shorter as the temperature and the concentration of acid increase. Explain how the results show this. So here's reaction time in seconds. You can see that they've got different reaction times. As the temperature of the acid goes from cold to warm, you can see the reaction time went down. So there's one bit of evidence. So in experiment A and B, the reaction time got shorter. So that one shows that temperature makes reaction time go shorter, and the 2 that will show that the concentration makes reaction time go shorter are A and C. You've got to make sure that your ribbon or the magnesium is the same form, because if you go from ribbon to powder, that's increasing your surface area. So if you chose C and D, then actually you're changing 2 things, which you shouldn't do in a fair test. So you've got A and C, which is both cold. you've gone from dilute to concentrated, and they're both ribbon, and you can see that reaction time has halved. So your first mark is for using experiment A and B and saying that reaction time has gone down when you've gone from cold to warm, and your second mark saying A and C because your reaction time has gone down going from dilute to concentrated. The next question is a 6-mark question, which I'll let you use the mark scheme that's online on the Google site to mark. Again, if you're not sure, then just show your teacher and see if you've marked it correctly. So we're on to the final section, the physics section. So you've got Laura and Paul are learning about distance, time in a science lesson. Paul walks around the school sports field. Laura measures the distance Paul walks and the time he takes. Laura draws a graph showing the results for the different parts of Paul's walk. There it is. Which part of the graph shows Paul is stationary? So the stationary bit is where the line's going to be flat. He's not moving any distance. So between C and D is the answer there. And it says, then, which two parts of the graph show Paul moving at a steady speed? So for a steady speed, you could have either between A and B or between E and F. So there he's moving, but you can see that it's a straight line. So either of those to be fine. Oh, you have to have both. Sorry, so you've got A and B and E and F. So 2 parts of the graph there. Next question, Laura takes 9 minutes to walk around the school sports field. She walks 400 metres at steady speed away from Paul, then accelerates for 50 metres away from Paul, and then walks 450 metres at steady speed back towards Paul. Calculate the average speed for Laura in metres per second. Give your answer to 2 significant figures. So first thing, it wants it in metres per second, and it says 9 minutes. The first thing to do is to convert the 9 minutes into seconds, which is 9 times 60, and that gives you 540, and then you want to add together, if for an average speed, the total distance that she has travelled. So that's 400 plus 50 plus 450, which equals 900. And then for speed, you got to do distance divided by time. So distance is 900 divided by the time, which is 540. And that gives you 1.7 if you round. But equally, if you got 1.66 or 1.67, that would also be fine. Next question. Paul tells Laura that although this is her average speed, she may never actually walk steadily at this speed during her walk. Is Paul correct? So Paul is correct. So the answer is yes. And the reason is that Laura might walk at different speeds throughout the whole. I mean, the average speed isn't what she might not walk the average speed at all. It might just be higher than that, lower than that. So if you put that Laura walks at different speeds, then that'll get you your mark. That you don't get a mark just for the yes. Just for the yes, you've got to say why. Next, a car manufacturer tests a car to find its mean fuel consumption. 6 different drivers, A to F, drive the car 700 metres in a test drive. The car was identical apart from the difference shown in the table. So you've got a few different columns there for the differences. Calculate the mean fuel consumption for the car from these results. So essentially you're working out an average here of these, of the fuel consumptions. So you're going to do 15.5 plus 17 plus 12 plus 16 plus 14.5 plus 15, and then divide by how many there are. So divide that by 6. If you work that out, then you get 15 as your average or your mean. Driver C's test has the worst fuel consumption compared to the mean. Use information in the table to identify and explain possible reasons for this result. So driver C has the worst fuel consumption. So the reasons are that firstly the car windows are open and there's a roof box fitted. So those two things will contribute to the lower fuel consumption because they'll both add extra air resistance or drag. So there's 3 marks there. First we're saying that the window is open and that a roof box is fitted, and that both of these have added drag. Finally, which test drive had the greatest effect on the atmosphere? Explain why. So the carbon dioxide emissions are what affects the atmosphere, and so if you look down the table, that is driver C because it emits the most carbon dioxide. So driver C, but that doesn't get the mark, the explanation gets the mark, and that's because it emits or gives out the most carbon dioxide during the drive. Next question, another one where you just need to look up the equation you need to use in the front of your paper. So the car has a weight of 12,000 newtons. It was driven by driver A with a driving force of 1,500 newtons for a distance of 700 metres. Calculate the work done. So work done equals force times distance. So the force is 1,500. The driving force times the distance, which is 700, and that equals, in joules, 105,000, so 1,050,000. So this will get you 2 marks, but this will get you 1 of those marks if you didn't get the final answer. Then in test C, the car was the same total weight as in test A. More work was done in moving the car during test C. Explain why. So again, that you need more driving force. There's more air resistance because the open windows or the roof box was fitted. So it's kind of the same answer as question 11b, which is pretty handy if you got both of those. 6 mark question here. So again, mark this yourself, please, using the mark scheme online, or ask your teacher just to check if you're unsure. Next question. Electric-powered cars are becoming more popular. John lives in the centre of the city. He is considering buying a battery-powered electric car. What effect will driving an electric car have on the environment, the atmosphere, and John as a driver? So notice there's 3 marks here. 3 marks here, and there are 3 different points to make. So you can't have 2 of the environment and 1 of the atmosphere and expect to get 3 marks. You've got to answer the whole thing. So you could say that John as a driver, you could say it would be a short range. You could say that you have to charge it very frequently. You could say that there's a low top speed, and you could say it's good for short journeys or use in city centres. Any of those would get you 1 mark. And then the environment or atmosphere, you could say that it reduces the pollution for a mark. You say that no fossil fuels are used by the car. You could say that disposal of the batteries might produce pollution. You could say there's reduced noise pollution, and you could say that the pedestrians might get injured because the cars are very quiet, so you might not hear them coming. So any one of the John as a driver one, and any 2 of those ones that I mentioned afterwards. Next question, which is the final question. Molly has investigated falling objects in a science lesson. She drops a piece of thin card from the top of a staircase and measures the time it takes to fall to the floor. She then changes its shape and repeats the test. Look at Molly's results. There they are. So there's the shape of the card, the description, and the time it took to fall. And so it says, Molly has started to write a conclusion about her results. Her conclusion is not finished. Finish the conclusion to explain her results for 2 marks. So card C falls fastest and card A falls slowest because you've just got to put a point for each of those. A has a larger surface area. And therefore A has more drag or more air resistance. Another question that has that as the answer. So add up your total and try the next one and see if you can beat your score in the next one. Make sure you write it on your poster as well.